All right, everybody, welcome to The Struggle Is Not Real. I am Mike Gandolfo, and I am joined, as always, by New York Times bestselling author Michael Lennington and the queen of coaching, Kristin Tabbert. How is everything up in Michigan today? Is it warm up there? Like, are you all getting any of this warmth that we're getting?
I've got my window.
You have your window open?
Yeah, we're supposed to be 70 tomorrow.
Man, look at that. All right. Nice. It's hitting 80 here today. So
oh wow.
Yeah. 80, but then we're gonna get all these storms and stuff tomorrow. So
we're supposed to get rain tomorrow too. Yeah. So we'll go from this to mud season and then summer.
Yes, right. It's cool. It's a good weekend because we've got a lot of people coming to town to visit. So it's we got a lot of our real estate friends from across the country coming in. I had a lunch with someone today, got dinner with a family tomorrow, and then dinner with someone Monday night. So nice. It's all good stuff. You know how much I love to connect. So, so the whole purpose of our show here, if you're new to it, is we challenge the long-holding entrepreneurial myths, and we hopefully help turn those kind of on their head and turn them around. And today, we're going to be talking about knowledge is not power. So let's just focus on those three words right there. Michael, will you check your input again just to make sure? Because again, I'm hearing you through I hear you a lot when you shuffle your papers. So, which means I think you're going through your computer, not through your microphone. Knowledge. Let's talk knowledge is power. Those three words attributed to Francis Bacon in the late 16th century have echoed through time, influencing how we view education, success, and progress. Let's take a journey back to Bacon's era, a time of stark contrast to our modern world. In the late 1500s, education was a privilege reserved primarily for the nobility and clergy. The vast majority of people were illiterate, with knowledge tightly controlled by those in power. It's actually a neat little thing there that just popped in my head. Bacon himself, born into a family of influence, received an education that was out of reach for most. He entered Trinity College at Cambridge at the age of 12, a luxury unimaginable to the common person at the time. Now, fast forward to our present day, the landscape of education and access to knowledge has undergone a radical transformation. Today, we live in an age where information is at our fingertips, where education is increasingly seen as a fundamental right rather than a privilege. The democratization of knowledge through digital technologies has opened up unprecedented opportunities for learning and growth. Consider this. In Bacon's time, books were rare and expensive, often chained to the library shelves to prevent theft. Today, we carry entire libraries in our pocket, with smartphones and tablets providing instant access to a world of information. The internet has become our modern-day printing press, revolutionizing how we share and consume knowledge. But this shift hasn't just changed how we access information. It's transformed the very fabric of our society. In Bacon's era, your birth often determined your fate. The son of a farmer would likely remain a farmer, with little opportunity for social mobility. Today, while challenges certainly remain, education has become a powerful tool for social transformation. It's now possible for individuals from diverse backgrounds to elevate their socioeconomic status through learning and skill development. However, let's not be too quick to pat ourselves on the back. While we've made tremendous strides, inequality in education persists. Just as in Bacon's time, socioeconomic factors still play a significant role in determining educational outcomes. Students from low-income backgrounds often face barriers to quality education, creating a cycle that can be difficult to break. Moreover, the sheer volume of information available today presents its own challenges. In Bacon's time, the struggle was accessing knowledge. Today, it's often about discerning reliable information from the noise. We're grappling with issues like misinformation and information overload, challenges that Bacon never would have imagined. As we reflect on these changes, it's clear that the power of knowledge remains as relevant today as it was in Bacon's time, but perhaps the nature of that power has shifted. In the 16th century, simply possessing knowledge was power. Today, the real power lies in how we use that knowledge, our ability to think critically, to innovate, and to solve complex problems. So as we dive deeper into this topic today, I want you to consider, how are you leveraging the unprecedented access to knowledge that we enjoy? Are you using it to empower yourself and others? How can we ensure that the power of knowledge is used to create a more equitable and just society? Kristin, is it possible for equitable and just fair to coexist?
I have these conversations a lot with people, and there's, I think, a confusion, Mike, that people think fair and equitable are the same. And in my world, I don't think that's the case. Sometimes what is equitable doesn't always feel like it's fair. And the fair thing is, in my opinion, very rarely equitable across the board. I mean, you think about the teams, there's people who show up and they do the work and they do the practice, and so they earn the right to have the starting position, if you will. And there's other people who think that just because they're on the team, they made the team, that they should have equal playing time whether or not they show up or not. So no, I don't feel like that it's possible for equitable and just or fair. I think they can coexist, but I think the definitions have to be extremely clear, and that they're not equal in and of themselves.
It almost creates like this muddiness of a target, right? Instead of just saying, "Hey, we want to be fair," people they can use that as kind of a cop out. We want to be fair and equitable, knowing that that can be interpreted in lots of different ways. Versus saying, "Hey, our goal is to do this," you know. And I think there's a big challenge with that as well, because it creates this murkiness that is not healthy, because someone might look at that and say, "Oh, that seems fair," or "that seems equitable," and someone might look at it and not think it's fair and equitable. So, Michael, what are your thoughts on this subject here?
Well, I'm feeling very unknowledgeable today. So, it's a deep conversation, and I remember this story I heard back in business school, and it was about the price of milk and whether or not the price of milk should be set at the point of the transaction, or if the price of milk should be set by the government. Because, and I'm not. This is apolitical, so don't turn us off. I'm just this is just the story I heard. Blame the storyteller, not the story here. But anyway, so I heard this situation. So which is the better place? Where's the more efficient place to put the pricing? And the argument is that it's at the point of the transaction where both parties pay the cost, or sell the milk and pay for it, as opposed to central control. So I think when you try to force an equitable situation, there's a set of values and a distance from the transaction that makes those choices either better or worse. And so, the people actually have to lose or gain in the transaction. I'm going to make this point in a second here, Mike. But the people that have to lose or gain in that transaction are the ones that have the stake of paying too much or not paying enough. In that translation or that transaction, those two parties are the best informed about what that milk should cost. But when people try to make decisions to make things equitable at some higher level, inevitably they create this unnecessary friction in that transaction, which makes it unequitable for one or the other. And then when it becomes unequitable, that person no longer wants to play in that transaction environment, right? So the market collapses. So my point on that is that I agree with what Kristin's saying in terms of equitable, but fair is in the eye of the person in the transaction. So I think you have to look at this concept of equity and fairness as a thing that doesn't actually have an absolute value. You know what I mean? It depends.
And to stay on topic here a little bit about, because we're really talking about knowledge and power. No, you're great. You're fantastic. I think we need to go ahead and let's identify what we mean. And then again, this goes back to not being murky, right? Let's define what we think knowledge is. And Michael, you want to start with that?
Yeah. So we had a good conversation yesterday about that, right? So what is
I
information?
mean, I know we did, but everyone else doesn't know that yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I forgot. I didn't have that. I forgot that knowledge. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what strikes me is that when you look at knowledge, and the concept of knowledge is power. I think we sometimes have a bad definition of what knowledge is, and so information is verifiable, independently verifiable stuff that's out there in the environment that's information about things, right? And when I have knowledge, I have that information in my head. And that's what knowledge is. It's the information that we retain in our heads, right? There's more information out there that we could access, but we can't. We're finite in an infinite market. And so, what we have is knowledge. And that knowledge in the past, like you were saying, Mike, gave you power because you might know how certain things worked. And because of that, you had an advantage over the person you were dealing with because they didn't understand how things worked, right? But like you said, that knowledge is become available to everybody. It's ubiquitous almost. And so that
I
power,
can just go to YouTube and watch a video.
yeah, exactly. So that
Right.
power is really not there anymore. But that knowledge is still helpful because it's available to you and you can use it in the moment rather than have to go search for it. So it's not a non-zero value, but it's above zero. But the point I wanted to make is that we were talking about this yesterday, is that what is knowledge, and then what was it?
Wisdom.
I forgot. Wisdom. Yeah.
Yes.
Mike. So there you go. What's wisdom? And I think that ability to use knowledge in a way that is advantageous and that can add value is what we were talking about yesterday, is wisdom, right?
Absolutely. And I think in order to kind of define the three in simple terms, or to give an analogy, I like this, by the way. You all don't even know what I'm coming up with right now. So imagine, you got a set of Legos, right? The information is having a list of all the Lego pieces you have, and it tells you what you have to work with. Like, I have 50 bricks and 10 windows and 5 doors. That's the information. Knowledge is then understanding how to use these pieces. It's knowing how to connect them all together, how to fit the windows into the walls, how to attach the doors. You learn this by reading or watching an instructional video. Wisdom, though, is then knowing when to use what you have to make something really cool and special. It's deciding where to put the windows so they look nice, choosing the right color for the doors, making sure the castle is stable so it doesn't fall over. It's like using your experience and ideas to make the best castle ever, or to innovate and come up with something completely new. So, Kristin, we talked a lot about this as well yesterday, about just experiential knowledge and how important that is in helping someone with wisdom.
Well, first of all, I want to say it's really cool that the wisdom you had around your analogies, you were able to use and tie back into the real estate world. You tied it back to building a house.
I mean, come on,
I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
No, experiential knowledge doesn't necessarily equate to power. I mean, I had a client who was a chess player, and a lot of people who listen to us have heard this story before, right? But he had almost absolute comprehensive knowledge of every available chess move. I mean, he'd studied. I mean, talk about deliberate practice. This man was like deliberate practice on steroids. But the knowledge that he had did not create outcomes in the tournament world. He was actually losing tournaments. The knowledge that he had should have made him a grandmaster player, and he had the same rankings for 30 years. He had plateaued. So the amount of knowledge that he had wasn't giving him the outcomes that he had. What we had to do is take the knowledge that he had and turn it into wisdom, just like we've talked about. So it was giving him a different perspective. It wasn't about, I mean, as the story goes, his chess coach was telling him that he was impulsive because he'd run out of time and he'd make these moves. And he wasn't running out of time because he didn't understand what the opening move was or what the next play should have been. He would make a move and he would know exactly, because of his knowledge, which should have ultimately given him power in the tournament. He knew exactly what his opponent should have played in response to his move. And when that opponent didn't make that play, it threw him for a loop. He would get sidetracked and he'd start thinking, this was the appropriate play. He didn't make that play. And now my 3 moves ahead, because I know what should have come next and come after that, I don't even know what to do with this now. And he'd try to reanalyze everything. Ultimately, the clock would wind down and he would make a quick move, which appeared to be an impulsive move. And then he would have to try to recover from that. So what we had to do was think about the knowledge that he had and why he would get so locked in on the right and wrongs of his knowledge, and start helping him to change his perception around why people made the moves that they move, keeping him present in the moment, and ultimately shifting that power during the tournament play.
And then I actually think Michael too, like we got to give Kristin some kudos here, because like Kristin doesn't know anything about chess. Like,
No.
and it didn't really matter from a coaching perspective. You know, to me, the story of knowledge or wisdom actually comes more in Kristin's example as a coach, because she really had very limited experiential knowledge on chess. I'm sure you knew what the pieces were and probably how they moved and some real basic things. You know,
Even barely.
You might be able to set up a board, maybe not. The knight and the bishop might be in flip-flopped, and the white might not be on the right side. The horsey, that's right.
The horsey was
the horse in the castle.
Yeah, the horsey in the castle. The queen's honor color, always, just so you know. But you had some very basic knowledge about chess, basic working knowledge. I mean, beginner level at most. But your wisdom comes in your ability to meet people where they're at and help them challenge the way they're thinking and thinking differently. Michael, you've lived with this person for a long time. Kind of expand on that a little bit about Kristin's innate gifts and how she uses that for wisdom.
Yeah, that's I could take the rest of the day on that. But what I've noticed about Kristin is that first of all, she listens, she hears what you say, she watches what you do, as much as she, just what you think you're saying, she listens to what's actually being said, and which is hard to explain, except that she doesn't just believe what you're saying in the words you're using, right? Does that make sense? And so she listens for the meta story, and I think that's what she does really, really well. She hears what people say, and if they say that and they think this, and they say that and they think this, then what this could be going on for them. And it's that leap between the two things that were explicit to the implicit that I think Kristin is really, really good at, and so that's a gift I've never figured out, though. So I've just exhausted my knowledge on that, but it is an amazing thing. And what's powerful about that is that when we get stuck in our own thinking traps, right, our own knowledge, our own understanding of how things operate, we can get so stuck in that we can't see alternatives, right? And I think what Kristin sees is the alternatives.
Yeah, and so obviously, if we want a different result, we've got to take different actions, which means we got to challenge and revise our thinking. Like the thinking. The way we think about something is truly where the wisdom kind of comes from that leads to innovation.
Yep.
So, well, that's fantastic. I love that story, by the way, Kristin. I think it's fantastic. And I hope you enjoyed your kudos of me and Michael saying nice things about you. And now that's over.
I was going to say, it doesn't happen very often. And it's recorded for posterity. So.
All right, so talk a little bit more, Michael, on how you see this difference between the interplay between knowledge and power, and we'll even go talk about power and wisdom and power and information, like just the information, the interplay between those two things.
Right. Well, I think having knowledge is always going to be valuable, because it's always better to have it in your head than it is to go to have to look it up. And there's also this right now almost a godlike faith in AI for a lot of people. And so that's, I think that's okay to some degree, but at one level it's not God, and it's not perfect, and it makes mistakes. And and actually I got into an argument with an AI once, and I actually knew the right answer. So and it was telling me it wasn't the right answer. And I eventually got it to agree with me, and it said it was sorry, which was kind of spooky actually, but
it apologized to you for real?
It did.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it was I'm not going to go tell you what it was about, but it was about a politician made a quote, and I remember the quote, but I couldn't remember the name of the politician that said it. So I asked AI, and it started throwing all these other people out and saying they said this and they said that, and none of them said it. It was just making it up. And then finally I said, no, none of those people are right. And then I remember who it was. And I said, it's this guy. Oh yeah. It's that guy. The other guys didn't even say it, did they? No, I'm so sorry. And so here's my point. And I, by the way, I recorded that in case you don't believe me. I've got a ChatGPT to connect me. Anyway, so here's the thing though. That ability to have knowledge personally between your ears is so powerful because it's immediately accessible and you can build on it, right? So we were talking about this, is that I know some things, but really where the power of that comes in is with my wisdom in applying those things. And it's almost this metacognition that I was talking about with Kristin. It's like you're kind of above the information and you're seeing connections and you're seeing patterns in it that allow you to create real new thought, right, for yourself. And I think that's where wisdom comes in. And I think wisdom is something that is always going to be powerful. And I think that's where we as human beings have a unique place in the in the knowledge base, is that we have wisdom. And that to me is kind of comforting at one level, even with AI out there. Not that AI can't come up with great stuff and come up with good ideas and all that. I'm not saying that, but we are not, I guess, subject to AI. I mean, AI is a tool that we use, and it's important to remember that.
Well, at the same time, like, and I know we talked about this a lot yesterday too. Is, to me, like, the whole education system has got to be completely reformed, and it's probably overdue for the reformation. And the internet, the use of AI, all that stuff, those tools make it where, it's important to have knowledge, but at the same time, like, if having knowledge stored in your head was power, then we would be all ruled by Cliff Clavin right now from Cheers. So Cliff Clavin would be the master of the universe. And at the end of the day, we know that information and knowledge are readily available at our fingertips if we know how to access it. And that's there for everybody, as long as they have access to the internet, which is becoming more and more prevalent. The true power, though, relates in now critical, like I said in my opening, the critical thinking, the critical problem solving, the innovation, how you're applying those things and what goes on. And so we went from an education model where it's like, hey, remember what happened on this date, or remember this formula, or remember how to do this math problem, whatever else. And I also want to make sure that I don't misspeak, that especially when it comes to math and science, some of that stuff, that fundamental understanding of how those things are, even though the knowledge is readily available, some of it leads to the complex problem solving that does come forward. I just don't know if we are, as an education system overall, really harnessing that stuff to lead to the complex problem solving that needs to happen.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there, Mike. And I think where I go with that is that the rote memorization of facts is not as valuable as it once was. There's a certain thing, though, that does happen, especially what you were talking about in terms of higher level mathematics, things where you have to solve problems. Because of neuroplasticity, the more that you learn how to do math problems and solve math problems, you solve verbal problems, you kind of think through things and see connections between things. The more you use that part of your brain, the more that part of your brain grows. And so I think
this is why I do the Wordle every day.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. It does.
Yeah.
It changes that stuff. So that's where I think education, where it still has value. So physics and mathematics, hard sciences are really good. English is really good, where you got to solve word problems and things like that. I think there's stuff like that, but where you've got to memorize long, lists of dates, that may help your brain in certain ways to remember things, but those dates aren't necessarily as valuable as they once were, because you can get those in 2 seconds on the internet. And that's where I think you're right. I think education is really designed for almost an agrarian age, maybe an industrial age, but it's certainly not designed for, what
hasn't changed much since when Bacon was going through his education process. Kristin, you had something to add?
Oh, I was just going to tie it back to my senior biology class in high school. We had to memorize all the kingdoms, phylums, class, orders. I mean, big, long list of stuff, right? And
I was a biology teacher.
Yeah, I mean, to what point? I mean, I got called in the office for cheating because I was the only one in the class that scored 100% on the test, and it was only because of the tool I used to memorize the all the things that we needed to know for the test. And when I showed him how I did it, I got my A, and the rest of the class didn't like the curve for that. But to that point, the memorization
Let me ask you a question about that though, real quick. Did you have the tool to memorize it before that, or did the tool develop out of necessity so that you could actually memorize those things?
The tool came out of necessity to memorize those things.
And so in that case, you know where I'm going then with this, Michael, right? The knowledge, actually, the lesson, what the development of the tool was, oddly enough, what you got out of biology class was way more useful than actually remembering the kingdoms and the phylas, the classes, and all that other kind of stuff.
It absolutely was. It absolutely was.
Yeah. So you can continue with your thought, but I mean that's obviously probably something. I'm guessing that's probably a tool that you use today.
It is for me. It's not something I can actually teach to other people. Maybe I could, but it might be a little difficult depending on how they learn.
You're proving my process, or my point right here. It's like I would tell my kids that I really don't care what your grades are, as long as you're giving effort, and it's noticeable that you're giving effort, and that you're figuring out the process of how you learn, process information, and then can actually use that information to innovate. And that process is really what I don't feel like enough kids, me included, and maybe I'm hurt here because I feel like I didn't come out of and I had top level education. Like I had very good private schools, and I still don't feel like I left there with the process of how I learn. Mm-hmm. And that process, like that's where the wisdom comes through. Like when you can actually then take the information, discern it, and then apply it in several different ways. That's wisdom. That's where the wisdom can kind of start to just blossom. That's why you're brilliant today. And I'm just some schlep on a podcast.
They're like me. Fill the third seat here.
No, I think you're brilliant in where you took this conversation, because it was just kind of an antidote to the, underpin some of the things. And you really, I like where you went with this and how you expanded on this and really made it come alive for people.
Mm-hmm. One of these days we're going to argue instead of just telling each other how great we are. Well, we haven't told Lennington how good he is, so we won't do that today.
That's fine with me. I'm not sure I'm bringing much to this conversation that I got.
Oh, you bring a lot.
Well, I've got my cold. I got that going for me.
Yeah. Anything you all want to say to kind of wrap this thing up? Anything you want to add,
Kristin?
I think it's just understanding, that, the fair and equitable thing, knowledge doesn't mean that you hold power in a certain way. I think it's reframing knowledge to wisdom. How do we get from something we know to the wisdom piece that can be a tool that helps us go beyond just the memorization of information?
And it's one of the key reasons of why you need to hire a coach. This is not an infomercial for Kristin, although Kristin would love to talk to you about it. But honestly, like that's what a coach does, right? Like a coach is there to help draw out potential. And a lot of that comes out of giving a unique perspective and help challenge your thinking and shift your thinking so that you can look at things from a different angle. Instead of, Michael, I'm gonna let you talk about this for a little bit. We get kind of stuck in a rut with our thinking, and it's hard to break outside of those barriers.
Why am I the poster child for that?
No, you're the most learned on that subject. Is what I'm trying to say.
I'm the most stuck in my ways, probably. Yeah. Anyway, so I ask that question again, Mike, because I was thinking about something else, and that's my problem. But ask the question again, because I think it was an interesting question, and I kind of got off on this concept of the different kind of modalities of intelligence and knowledge and wisdom. Because
sure.
I like, for example, I was just thinking, my son-in-law is a genius at understanding how the world works and how to fix things and how to make things better. And he's always, that's where his head goes. Right. And my brother Pete was a little bit like that as well. He could just see how to fix things and how to create better things. Other folks are really good at seeing how ideas are sort of visual in their heads, and they can move ideas around visually. I kind of had that skill a little bit. Kristin uses sound. Her ability to use sound, and I'm not going to go any farther than that, is a way that you kind of use that in the world, right, Kristin? I mean, you know what I'm talking about when I say that. Yeah. So I wish that's where my head went. So ask your question again. I'll be
And I was going more with the rat model, that sometimes we get stuck in a rut of our thinking, which limits our pool of action. So we don't ever we don't get the perspective. So the coach comes in and gives us a different perspective, helps challenge our thinking so that we can then take the appropriate actions to actually get the result that we're going for. And typically speaking too, it's usually probably, I'm guessing, Kristin, and so now you can answer this too, is it's usually not some massive shift. It's probably just like, hey, what if we pulled this lever over here instead of pulling these levers over here? And then you end up getting the result that you really want. So I was asking you, Michael, specifically about getting stuck in those limiting beliefs of thought, of the different types of thought of actions that you can take.
Yeah. So, that's a really good point. And I think we mentioned the RAP model. So everybody probably knows a little bit what that is, but results are the outcome of actions. R's result, A is actions. And then what drives our actions is our beliefs, our thinking, all that stuff. So the T drives the action, drives results. So the RAP model is just kind of how we can evaluate how we get results. And I think what happens is that at the thinking level, we're unconscious of so much of our belief system elements and our thoughts at any given point in time that we just kind of walk around with all that stuff in our head. And when something happens in the external environment, it triggers us, and we pull up those beliefs and those thoughts, and then we act on them, right? And so one of the things that I know to be true is that we all believe that our beliefs are true. Otherwise, by definition, they wouldn't be beliefs, right? So I believe that my beliefs are true. So do you. So does Kristin. And some of the ways, our beliefs might be in conflict with one another, right? So there's also true that some of our beliefs that we believe to be true are not true, but we act as if they are. So when we are getting suboptimal results, I think it's important to go back and look at how we're thinking about things and challenge our beliefs about how things work, right? And so, I'm not going to get boring with this, but that's how we help people get better with the 12-week year, is that if I can't take an action, or I don't take an action, and what's the thinking that's causing me not to take that action? What am I thinking about that? Like asking for referrals. People don't like to be asked for referrals, maybe my belief. So I don't ask because I don't want to offend people. The other belief might be that people like to be able to be asked for referrals because it builds a relationship, right? They want to help me. So either one of those beliefs could be true, but I'm behaving as if my belief is and the other one isn't. So if I want to change, I got to be willing to just fundamentally become more aware of my thinking, and look at the ways of my thinking and see how productive they are, and identify ways to be even more productive by shifting those thoughts and those beliefs. And that's where Kristin comes in, because she's really good at helping you confront those unproductive beliefs and shifting them.
Yeah, because we have to confront the fact that, a lot of people have their identities tied to those beliefs. And in some cases, those beliefs could just be absolutely wrong. And to be so tied to those beliefs, to have to come forward and confront the fact that I might be wrong, that's a hard position to stand in, right? So it takes somebody who has no skin in the game, if you will. I don't have an ego around your ego. It's asking the questions in a way that challenges their beliefs, asking the what if questions so that they can begin to shift and say, okay, I understand what you're saying, that there is a possibility that this might be okay. And then I ask the questions, what if we change this little piece of information over here that you've always believed and we turned it into this? What would that mean for you being forward? And it ties to who you want to be in the future then. When your limiting beliefs, you are so tightly tied to your limiting beliefs, it limits your potential of who you can actually become, all the potential, all the possibility that you can be.
And this goes back to the practical application of today's episode, because this is really, if anything, this is all about, hey, challenge your thinking, try to think outside the box, get creative. And I'm going to use Michael and Kristin as an example of how this is done. And this is something we do in 12-week year as well, is if you have a goal or if you have something you do. So Michael and Kristin said one time, they said, what if we had to come up with $250,000 in like 2 days or something like that, whatever, you all put a time frame on it, it's 2 to 3 days. And they put that problem in the middle of a piece of paper. And then you just start to mind dump everything that you can come up with to get to that $250,000 in 2 or 3 days. And what I tell people when I take people through that exercise is I say, I want you to start with the most ridiculous things, because what happens innately is we start thinking about the same things that we've always been doing that aren't working. And so when you say, okay, well, I want to start off with, hey, I'm going to rob a bank. I'm going to go, win the lottery, whatever it might be. And you
Sell
start
my kidneys.
Sell kidneys, right? Or, kill Michael for his insurance money, whatever it might be.
Right.
Yeah. Whatever.
Whoa.
Hey. So, get ridiculous with it, because it starts to open up different avenues, and then you're going to start to get some creative thought that kind of pops up in that mind mapping. And then you can go through and you can start to look at what are some effective ways for you to get to that goal, and identify those things more efficiently and effectively. So, I think we're good for today. You guys good?
Yeah.
I think we're good.
Well, next week we have a topic that Michael is super prepared for, and that is failure is not final. So we will be back here. We're almost halfway through this 15 episode series. It's episode 7 next time. Failure is not final, and we can't wait to hear from you all. And we'll see you then. Take care.